powerless waif of a little boy, which is not even, those are inaccurate judgments of both kids, obviously. But when your big emotions are happening as a teacher, all your judgments and all your lenses fly out too. And I had this thing that was not healthy, but when my students started to escalate, right when CPI training says back off, give them a lot of space, there was something in me that wanted to like, oh, yeah, you come on up, come on, come on, come on. And I would want to walk toward it, and I don't know, there was nothing rational about doing that. And I was putting myself in bodily harm to do that. But there was something in me that wanted to stand up as the gatekeeper and as the defender of that classroom for all the other students so that they could know, I'm not afraid of what's happening right here, and you're safe because I'm willing to go in front of you. And it was just, that was just how my brain was working, and I had to stay conscious of that because there was a couple of times I could have been really decked and beaten up pretty bad. So you don't happen in your classroom a lot, but it happened in mine. So I had to understand my triggers. Write down, we don't have time to do this, but this would be a really great exercise to do in class if you ever had time, to write down the most recent event that flipped your switch as a teacher. The last thing that just made you real mad, and the kid and what he did, and why it did, and to just describe that, what you know, the ugly, icky emotion that you had over that, and then to acknowledge your emotions. Why were you feeling like that? Were you feeling powerless? Were you feeling like, I don't know what to do? Were you tired? Were you hungry? Were you overwhelmed? Were you feeling lonely? I mean, all of your basic emotions as a human being, were those all at the surface? You had a rough day, your dog is dying, I mean, and then you have to face this kid? Really? So you have to acknowledge your own emotions so that you can see them through a realistic lens. And ask yourself, what's the student really asking for, and what need is this student really displaying? So go back down to underneath Maslow's hierarchy and figure out, are your basic needs met? Have you been acknowledged? Have you had your social needs met today? Are you bored? Do you need something to challenge your brain? And so, but you have to work from the bottom up and really figure out where the behavior is coming from. And ask where your behavior is coming from. If your students are setting you off and you're having a really crappy day and it's only 11:30, stop and think, okay, what are my basic needs that have not been met today? What am I worried about? Can I write these down and set them aside? But you have to acknowledge your own feelings because they will pile up and then they'll be there on the weekend and they will not go away. If you don't deal with them, they'll come out sideways. So we don't have time to do that exercise, but it would be important. Self-awareness. Here's the second one. I think this is the second one. Stay focused on your students. When you have challenging behaviors or when challenging things, issues come up with students that you feel not a whole lot of support to deal with, and you're not really sure where those behaviors are coming from or even what to do on the fly, remember, stay focused on your students and ask, what is my job? Who am I really working for? And what is about to drive my behavior? Because I might not understand why the student is doing or acting the way he or she is. I might not understand what happened this morning or what happened last night. But I need to pay attention to what is driving my behavior right now. And sometimes it's okay to just go, where's my brain? Where's my own brain? So that you can take care of what's in front of you with your students. Upstairs, downstairs brain, you get to draw a picture in your note, but we don't really have time for you to draw a picture. But I just want you to remember that you are just as capable of switching back and forth between upstairs and downstairs brain as your students are. But because you're a mature adult, you have the ability to willfully choose to operate in your upstairs brain. Your trauma-exposed students don't have that skill yet. It's not, it hasn't been solidified, it hasn't been firmly established in their executive functioning center to be able to do that yet. So you want to do what you can to help them get there. And some days just feel like an Escher, where nothing makes sense, right? Don't I had to put that in there for you. Okay, so then big idea 2 is relationship, but you need to attend to your relationships. There's 8 questions to build strong relationships with each of your students in your notes there. And I would have wanted to give you time to think of the one student in your classroom right now that is really flipping your lid or causing triggers or is like day after day or every other day, kind of that student. And in every classroom, you're going to have your top 5 kids. Whether they're trauma exposed or not, you're going to have your top 5. And even if those top 5 were removed and put in another class, another top 5 would rise to the surface. So you will always have your top 5, and just know that that's going to be part of your teaching life. So develop some strategies to be able to discern exactly what the needs are of those top 5. Usually they're social needs, because your top 5 are probably the loudest and the most disruptive. But it also means that you need to find your low 5, the 5 that are unnoticeable, that are slipping between the cracks, that are maybe socially rejected or socially ignored. So while you have your top 5, remember to scan the margins and make sure that your marginalized students are being brought into the circle. So when you think of a student who really activated your trigger, you want to look at that list of 8 questions and figure out where's the weak link. I've got this and this and this going, but I really don't know what this kid is interested in, and I don't really know what matters to this kid. So what's your in to be able to develop a relationship with this kid? Because that is where it starts. Trust and relationship and some sort of bonding with that student on something. Any student, I don't care how tough, rough, unreachable, or unattractive they may present themselves to be, there should be something that you can endear yourself to about that kid. It could be his or her eyes, the way they laugh, some mannerism that reminds you of a favorite cousin. You can find something that will help you bond to a student that you're struggling with. Okay, next in relationship is that we need to forget labels, forget their disability diagnosis, forget that they're homeless, they are in a single parent family, they are just came from this country 3 months ago to this country 3 months ago. All the things that you would use to label them or categorize them in a certain box of students with a prejudged sort of wrapping around that box. We need to move away from labels and remember the influence that you do and do not have in your classroom. So there are things that you can control. Control is a myth. You will never control everything. You can't control others, you can only control yourselves. But there are things about your classroom and your classroom culture that you do have reasonable control over. And those things will actually give you comfort from day to day. But there's also things that you cannot control and things that you can only influence in your environment and your relationships. You can influence through focus and through kindness and through implicit behaviors in the classroom. And so I think in your notes there's a place where you do some matching. Is that in there? Okay, go ahead and do that exercise really quick. Just match, do the match. What you cannot control and what you can influence. So if student A comes, whether or not student A even shows up today, you can't control that, but what can you influence? How can you still have influence with that situation if you can't control it? The next one is, this is a concept called doors and windows. That when doors close, there's almost always a window. So you're going to have students in your classroom who may or may not be trauma exposed, but tonight's focus is on our trauma exposed students who will not want to bond with you, not want to attach to you. In fact, will go out of their way to be really unreachable and almost aversive to try to reach out to. So students will put up doors to protect themselves from disappointment, to protect themselves from you getting to know more about them than they want you to know. And sometimes they put up doors to test how hard or how committed you are in the pursuit of relationship with them. Some of them will test your loyalty and your devotion to your students, especially if you're someone who is perceived to be liked and really well liked, and you have a lot of students like to be with you, and you're sought after as an adult in the building. A trauma-exposed kid who's experienced a lot of neglect abuse and inconsistency and heartbreak and abandonment will actively reject you to test how loyal you are and to test whether or not you can be trusted. And so your extension of grace and mercy to the most unreachable kid is likely going to be the one who needs it the most, even if they blow it off, don't give you eye contact. The fact that you pursue them with some incremental approximation toward the goal of relationship, it matters. Remember the video that you just watched at the beginning of this presentation? Who knows when it was suggested that coach go and pursue a relationship with Chad the kid, who was a kid at the time, an adult now. We don't know if Chad put up a fight or resisted that. We don't know how easy it was for that relationship to start. He said, sometimes I drove him home because Chad needed an adult to help him, even just get to practice. Sometimes they talked and sometimes they didn't. But it was the long-term commitment that meant a lot to Chad. And that hug speaks deeply about the impact and the effect and the beliefs that kid was able to generate about himself, being worthy of that love and worthy of that pursuit, that was life-changing for him. Okay, so I would love it for you to turn to your partner and talk about your last window, but we need to keep moving, so that's another exercise that you guys can do together. So, and number 3 of the big idea of belief is that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay for you as a teacher to have rough days. It's okay for you to not always know what to do, because you're going to be okay the next day. You're going to get through this, and you're going to get the help you need. Stay open to consult, stay open to the input from your peers. Choose healthy people to vent to in your building. Don't give your hard days to people who are kind of have dark souls and are negative, because they will want to commiserate with you. They will want to talk about everything that's wrong with your building, with your school, and with your kids. They'll agree with you, but you'll leave that conversation feeling lifeless. So you need to go after peers and colleagues who are life-giving in their conversation and who leave you feeling alive and hopeful when you walk away from their rooms. So acknowledge the not okay. It's okay to give a little air to the not okay and to acknowledge that it's there, because when we pretend that it's not there and that we're not feeling it and the kid's just being a jerk, then that stuff gets pressed down and it comes out sideways, like I said before. Check the 4 questions, and the 4 questions are in your notes. When you can give these questions to your students and you can give them to yourself. But if you thought right now, if you took just 30 seconds right now to think about the one thing that you were most worried about when you came to school today, or the thing that's going to be on your mind sitting around when you go to bed tonight, the 4 questions are, because you've got to learn how to acknowledge your own hard feelings in order to help a kid acknowledge theirs. If you're not going through this process with yourself and going through this gentle questioning and this gentle kind of assessment of your own emotions, it's going to be difficult to walk an escalated, anxious, sad, grieving student through their hard emotions. So the questions are, what is it that I'm struggling with right now? Has anybody ever done that? Like you just feel anxious and you stop and think, okay, what's really bothering me? What is it really? And sometimes you don't know right away, but you have to sit with it for a minute. Okay, it's really because I got that text from my mom yesterday. And that was a really hard text to get from my mom. And that's what's bothering me. So then you ask, what's interfering with my success and happiness at school or at work? Is this an impediment to my joy? Is this getting in the way of my being able to return to joy after I have setbacks? And who's the safe person I can share my vulnerability with? That's a good question to ask a kid. If they're not opening up to you, you can say, who could you open up to? Because it sounds like you need to talk, or it sounds like you have a story to tell, or someone needs to know about this. Who would you like to talk to? And then you can direct them toward the person that they do really trust and believe. Okay, so on the very last page, this is the last point under belief. What you believe about your work, about your students, and what they believe about themselves and about you. Don't let fear drive the bus. We need to reframe what we believe about our students, if we start going into that dark pit of despair, or if they start looking less, when we start depersonalizing and not seeing our students as individuals with names and stories and histories and strengths and endearments, we need to reframe what we believe about our students and remember that every behavior is an expression of a need. And some of our kids know how to get their needs met in healthy, good ways. If they need social attention, they'll come right up to you and just let you know in a really great, socially appropriate way. And other kids will break your freaking heart because they need love so bad and they don't know how to get it. And they would rather be confident that you're going to reject them than risk that if they move toward you, you might not love them. And the term love is actually becoming operationalized in the literature. And the features of love are being recognized as best practice in the classroom. I know this because I just wrote my tenure essay on this very thing. So I'm telling you, I did the lit search on this one, and I was amazed that you can, it's not quite yet, but in a little while, we're going to be talking about love and attachment in the classroom. It's true. Because brain imaging is telling us that kids who feel loved, feel the elements of love, there isn't a better word for all that, unless you get all verbal. You say belonging and safety and acceptance and longing and eye contact and I'm glad to be with you. It's just easier to say I love my students. I'm exercising teacher love. And I am attached, I'm allowing my students to attach to me because I'm a healthy adult and I can steer that attachment and not disappoint them. So you're becoming teachers in a very exciting period of history. So your last exercise is to circle the trigger, draw a line to the need, and box the strategy. Just I would have you just kind of point from the way students are behaving to the possible need. It's a way for you to kind of seal in your brain the information that you've just taken in. And while you do that, here's your last video, and then you will be done.
My child is creative.
My child is clever.
you for your attention tonight. And